Good morning, everybody. My name is Bricky. I hope you're having a wonderful morning today. Today, we are going ahead and taking some time to talk about the new changes that were added to the DBD patch of, believe it's patch 2.6.0. And the one with the plague, the new map, and everything in between. Now, there were a couple things that were added to the game in particular that I thought were extremely interesting, mainly perk changes, as well as a couple other balance changes that I felt like it deserved its own complete video. Now, the plague and all of her respective perks are all put into a video that I came out with yesterday. If you'd like to check it out, you look at the card on the top of the screen. However, for today, we're talking mainly about the patch, as well as things like the map and the other major balance adjustments. I will touch on the plague and how powerful I think she is at the end of today's video, but for the time being, I want to talk about the feature content, the balance, as well as a couple of the map changes and ranking changes. So we're not going to be going over bug fixes because that is a gigantic list literally every single time, and so I'm going to go ahead and just let that happen and move from there. So starting off, we are going to work on the what is this one? I guess the feature and content would be the first one. So they added, of course, a new map for the Red Forest theme, which is the Temple of Purgation. That is the new map with the new killer. We'll touch that in the end of the video, so don't need to worry about that quite yet. Passing that, we have a couple other strange features, such as adjusting the EU, LA, and privacy policy, a couple updated versions of engines, modified the progression display for certain daily rituals, a lot of things like that. Nothing too important and nothing too game-changing, so I want to move past that directly into audio adjustments and balance. So starting off, we have decrease the distance at which you can hear survivors breathing and grunting while they are hiding in lockers. Now, it seems to be quite a thing to be buffing lockers nowadays, and I'm perfectly okay with that. I think buffing lockers is actually a rather fun technique because stealth is very, very poor right now, and increasing the locker power is also enjoyable. It's a small buff, but it's a buff nonetheless. Next one is adjusting the base occlusion audio balance. The basement occlusion audio balance. Very odd way to say that, but this will make sounds coming from the basement to be attenuated or muted in most circumstances. Now, this I like a lot because I seem to be the kind of person who yeets themselves into the basement when being chased by a killer, and they seem to know almost immediately and they can hear me. And I like the idea, especially with the decreased distance in which you can hear survivors breathing and grunting in the locker, to be able to run into that area, especially if I have something like Dance With Me or some perk like that, and make myself completely silent and, do a pretty good job at it. I don't know. Imagine having Dance With Me, having your scratch marks go away, and then run into the basement with Head On, the new locker perk, and then busting out of the locker in the basement, and then stunning the killer and running away. It sounds like a super memey build and just sounds a lot of fun. Finally, they added an adjusted audio occlusion for buildings with multiple floors. I'm assuming this just means the audio for multiple floors of buildings is easier to hear. Now, going from there, we have emblem changes. Now, emblem changes is very weird and kind of strange, and it also goes with our ranking changes later. I'm not entirely going to touch on these because I've never been a person who really cares a whole lot about rank or emblems. However, I will talk one thing. I'll do like a little bit of a all of it at once kind of statement. It is very hard to pip now. I played about two and a half hours of Killer on the PTB yesterday for a Twitch stream, and I didn't pip, I think, one time. I never de-pipped, but I don't think I ever actually got a pip. I think I black pipped every single game. I started at rank 6, I ended at rank 6. And most of these games did have a disconnect in them because it seems like most of the survivors were having issues with DCing. It seemed to be a problem across the PTB. There were a lot of disconnects. But overall, it really was difficult to pip. And maybe if I start getting 4-mans and such, it'll be a little bit easier. But I did pull off a couple 3 kills, 4 kills during it, and just no pips. And even if I did pip, maybe it was like 1 pip during that entire period of time. It seems like it's significantly harder to do it now. And it could be because of the plague. She could particularly be a killer that's hard at ranking up. But overall, it was very difficult. Now, I don't really care about rank in this game. I personally feel like rank 1 isn't that fun to be at anyway. You fight really, really hardcore players and you take way longer to find a game. But it is something to note on regardless. So if that's something you're big into, that's my take on it. Moving from there, we have gameplay. The intensity of the terror radius is now scaled based on the vertical distance in addition to the horizontal distance. So there's a little bit of a difference of scaling for where the player probably is via their terror radius instead of just 32 meters side to side with an unlimited up and down. My assumption is this will be a lot easier to find where certain killers are based on their terror radius if they're below you or above you, for instance. So it might be easier to know if the killer on the game is above you and not right next to you, or particularly, let's say, the Ironworks of Misery. If they're really far below you, it should be much less loud than it is currently. And which I think is kind of nice. It lets you know when a killer is sometimes a little bit closer, farther away, and it makes it more consistent, and that's a very nice quality of life change. Going from there, survivors entering lockers now have the blindness status effect applied to them. This is mainly, I believe, by the locker object of obsession type thing. So the idea was that lockers would block an aura, and that made it really useful if you ever had to use barbecue and chili or any kind of particular perk that would reveal survivors, and using a locker would be the way to fix that. Object of obsession would be a really, really strong ability, because then they couldn't see you, but they could see... Wait, no. You couldn't see them, they could see you. Yes, as a killer. The survivor could see you, the killer couldn't see them, and it was almost consistent, and it became really, really powerful. And so I guess this is the fix to that. However, there are a couple of things that are surprising about this, though. If it has the blindness status effect, that means that certain things won't work, like perhaps dark sense, or also they won't see a person being hooked or downed, which is a little bit strange. That might be a bit of a nerf to lockers at the same time, but we'll see how that turns out. They added a new scoring event for perk-based stun events, Decisive Strike and Head On, worth 500 blood points. Fine with me. Anything to give the survivors more blood points. This is referred to a killer stun in-game. Cool. And then reduce the time before a player can heal a player who has recently moved. This should allow for players to start healing a recently canceled heal quicker than before. Just quality of life changes. Fine with me. Alright, let's get into the nice nitty-gritty of it. The killer perk changes. These are the ones that are very, very interesting. So starting off, we have barbecue and chili. Got a buff. Wow. Auras are revealed from 40 meters for all tiers of the perk instead of 52, 46, 40. So this isn't really a huge buff. This basically makes your barbecue and chili tier 3 all the time, except for the blood points. So the only reason to level up barbecue and chili is to increase your blood points. And honestly, that's a fine reason to do it anyway, but it's mainly just allowing you to have your aura reading at max all the time. And we'll see something similar here with Hex Rule. Overall, it's not really a buff. It's pretty standard. Everyone runs tier 3 anyway. It just makes it across the board a little bit easier. Distressing. All tiers award 100% bonus blood points. So this one is a little bit of the opposite. Distressing is now 100% at all tiers, but your terror radius increases more at all tiers. So it's more of a terror radius one at this point, with the blood point bonus as well. Fire Up. Each tier grants a stackable 2.5, 3% action speed bonus. So here's our Fire Up buff. Now, it's kind of a buff, kind of a nerf. I prefer it as a buff, but at the same time, it's kind of a nerf. It's weird. So you get 3% action speed for every generator completed. Before, it was a particular amount of action speed for particular amounts of generators. If you do the math, now it means that you'll get some action speed bonuses after one generator has been completed, which you never got before. However, it will mean that you'll have 1% less for every subsequent generator than before, but then an extra 1% more when every generator is done. Personally, I like this just because it gives you a slight action speed bonus when one gen is done, so the perk comes into effect much earlier, and it also comes into effect when all gens are done, giving you a solid 15%. However, some people have told me that it actually counts the final 2 generators, considering that there are 7 generators on the map, and so if every gen is done, you actually have a 21% action speed bonus. I can't confirm this, but if it does, that's pretty neato. Honestly, I'm fine with it. It's a nice quality of life. If I could, I would bump it up to 3.5% action speed bonus, but we'll see about that later on. Next up, Hex Devour Hope. This is the thing that is the most exciting to me, if this is correct. The perk grants 3, 4, 5% speed boost with 2 tokens. Exposed status effect applied at 3 tokens, and kills are available at 5 tokens. Now, I want to make sure that the text here is right, because this could be a quality of life change, or this could be the craziest, coolest new thing ever. Now, it could mean that prior Hex Devour Hope would only give you the Mori at 5 tokens at level 1, Exposed at level 2, and at level 3, the speed boost. What it could mean is instead it gives you all of it all the time with a changing speed boost with 2 tokens, basically making it worthwhile to have at level 1 instead of being useless until level 3. That is what I'm assuming it probably is. However, the flavor text makes it seem like the perk grants you a flat speed boost with 2 tokens, which would, at level 3, make Legion 115% movement speed, the Spirit 115, the Trapper 120, etc. Now, I don't think it does that, only because the flavor text in the PTB doesn't seem to go ahead and show that. However, if it does, that is so awesome. I really wish it would do that, because I think Hex Devour Hope needs a significant buff, and there's no way to make it better than a flat movement speed bonus. And I just don't think they actually are going to do that, but I really wish they will, and I really hope they do, because Hex Devour Hope is one of my favorite perks in the game. I find it so fun to use. It's just very bipolar. It doesn't really work all the time, but when it does, it's so great. I hope they do that, because I did use it yesterday, and the haste speed boost you get after hooking somebody, it feels very marginal. I don't feel it at all. It feels like it's just not even there. Maybe it's a bug, maybe I just don't notice it, but I don't know. It's very difficult to test. Maybe I'll try getting to a private match. Anyway, I really hope that this is an actual flat speed boost. If it's not, dang it, but I hope one day they do that kind of thing. Anyway, next up is Hex Ruin. This is a buff to Hex Ruin, but also kind of like Barbecue and Chili. All tiers affect all survivors and apply a penalty of 3, 4, 5% regression on good skill checks. This is just like Barbecue, where before it was a 5% regression for 2, 3, 4 survivors. Now it's a 3, 4, 5% regression to all survivors. Not really a huge change. It's nice. At least it makes Hex Ruin tier 1 not terrible, but it does still allow survivors to kind of power through Hex Ruin tier 1 a little bit easier. So, you know, it's all right. Hex Thrill the Hunt. All tiers grant 10% bonus hunting blood points for remaining totem. Cleansing speeds are the same. So I believe this is roughly the exact same thing as before. It just kind of makes everything a little bit easier and streamlines the process as prior. I don't use Thrill the Hunt very much, so I'm not entirely sure on the specifics, but that's kind of what I'm reading here. Monitor and Abuse. The FOV values are 3, 5, 10 instead of slightly, moderately, and considerably increased. Also amplified or simplified the tear radius value, so that each tier modifies the tear radius by the same value, 8 meters instead of 6, 7, and 8. So Monitor and Abuse now is not about increasing the amount of tear radius adjustments. Now it's about increasing the amount of FOV. So you get the same tear radius change at Monitor and Abuse tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. It's just your FOV values adjust as it goes up. Kind of nice, because if you're playing Myers and you want tier 1 Myers Monitor and Abuse build, you can get it at level 1. The FOV is the only thing that changes. So if you want it for the tear radius, you can get it at level 1. That's pretty cool. And the FOV is just a little extra bonus. Spies from the Shadows. Added a 5-second cooldown when this perk triggers. I'm kind of okay with that, kind of not. Part of me kind of wishes that you could still have the crows go off more often and everything like that, so it's kind of a slight nerf, but at the same time it's also annoying to have crows keep on making explosive sound effects. So I'm fine with it, but you know, I kind of wish they would have gone with like 4 seconds or something. And finally, Thanatophobia. Tier values are incremented at a rate of 4, 5, 6% up to a maximum of 16, 20, and 24%. Now, back in the day, Thanatophobia, I think, did 6%, 9%, 12%, 15% per wounded survivor. Now it'll be 6, 12, 18, and 24 at max rank. This is a good buff. It's a great buff, actually. An extra 9% of regression at max amount of everyone wounded. It's pretty solid. This is basically a buff in every single scenario. There's no way where this is ever a nerf. I will say, however, this is a little bit terrifying because Thanatophobia is now just better. It's a better perk. It's actually pretty good. And I'm not sure if I'd call it pretty good, but it's definitely usable and it's not a meme perk anymore. It's actually a solid choice. However, this subsequently buffs Legion by a huge amount. And I think if there's anything people don't want to see more of, it's more Legion. And this is going to have you see more Legion, probably. This is a huge buff to Legion, and have fun with that, kids, because nobody likes fighting Legion. So good luck. Now, moving from there, we have map changes. These ones aren't huge, except for a couple of them, and some of them are excited. So we have some procedural system changes. Add a new line of sight check for totem spawn points within 32 meters from a survivor spawn point. Now, this is great and a good step in the right direction. Now, basically what this means is that the game will check to see if survivors have line of sight of a totem within 32 meters from where they spawn. So no more spawning right next to totems. That is completely gone, kinda. If I'm reading this correctly, loss of line of sight means that a survivor will not be able to see the totem, but it could still be near them. For instance, if they spawn, let's say, outside the shack, and they go in the shack, there could be a totem inside that shack. However, they just can't see it. It's a nice step in the right direction. Not entirely the perfect way to fix hex perks, but it definitely helps. So long as they can't see it when spawning, it's okay. It's a good step. It's a good step. Now, they added a minimum distance of 48 meters between chest objects. So there's a little bit of a distance between chests now. Maybe it'll allow for more chests scattered around the map instead of a lot of them in one spot. I'm fine with that. Increase the minimum number of pallets to 8 global. I'm assuming some maps didn't have 8 pallets, like maybe Shelter Woods, so now every map will at least have a minimum of 8 pallets. Distances between spawnable objects, generators, hooks, pallets, etc. are now scaled based on vertical factor in addition to the baseline horizontal distance. So the distance between spawnable objects, for instance, if there are things that are right above or below each other, it makes it a little bit more of a distance now. So it'll be a little bit more balanced on areas where you go up and down. So that's a little bit better. Minimum distance between pallets was reduced for the Shelter Woods map. I'm assuming that they just made it so that it's easier to find more pallets in that map because it's very small. Some gameplay object placement changes in the Foundry. That's very vague. I'm assuming the Foundry got changed slightly. Some gameplay object placement changes on the Water Tower landmark tile. Also vague. I'm assuming just some easier ways to place the objects. Some gameplay or door frames added to the game map. Okay. Don't really know what that means. Added new tiles to the Red Forest map. Okay. I'm assuming that this is just a little bit of extra flavor to make the maps a little bit different. I don't know much about that. But okay, there we are. All right, map changes. The Hex one's the big one. Next up, we have ranking changes. I already discussed this. And then Survivor perk changes for our last bit. This is where Decisive Strike is finally nerfed. Hallelujah. After being unhooked by another player or yourself, Decisive Strike becomes active for 60 seconds. If you are grabbed by the killer while the perk is active, succeeding a skill check to cause an automatic escape and stun the killer for 3 seconds. Succeeding or failing the skill check will disable the perk for the rest of the trial. Succeeding the skill check and thus stunning the killer will result in you becoming the Obsession. Now, this is great. I am totally fine with this change. It's still a one-time use. It is an anti-tunneling tool instead of an actual anti-everything tool. You still have your skill check, you still have your stun, and it makes you the Obsession, so there's kind of a little bit of a trade-off. How funny would it be to Decisive Strike somebody at the end of the trial, become the Obsession, and then they whack you because they have Rancor and you die? I find that hilarious. However, mainly this whole deal is just a nice change because it fixes it in almost every way. You'll get your early hook off way earlier. If you want to go for the person on the hook again, it makes it harder for you. It's still a reason to take it. I'm fine with this. The only thing that I have a problem with is Dying Light, where apparently if you kill the Obsession who has Dying Light and then you get Decisive Strike, there's a new Obsession and Dying Light turns off and all the work you've made to go kill the Obsession is gone. So that sucks, if that is the case. They might want to change that a little bit, but we'll see how that turns out. Or it could be good. Maybe that person's on Death Hook, and then decisive strike you, and then you can just smack him again, and then, you know, free dying light. I don't know. Depends. Interesting enough, though. Empathy. Empathy now works within a range of 64, 96, 128 for tiers 1, 2, 3, respectively. Before, I believe it was unlimited at max tier, so people are seeing this as an empathy nerf. It's not. I don't think a single map is larger than 128 meters, and if they are, it's just not a value worth worrying about. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's just a number change or a flavor text change. It's either they're trying to make it more obvious. Same thing with the FOV. Lithe, remove the chase condition. Lithe now only triggers on rushed vaults. I like this one a lot. So now you don't need to be in a chase to use Lithe. If you want to just get away from the killer as fast as possible, you want to get somewhere quick, just fast vault an area, boom, you're gone. Very cool, very nice. Kindred, all survivors' auras are shown at all tiers. If the killer is within 8, 12, 16 meter range of the hooked survivor, the killer's aura is revealed to other survivors. If I'm correct, before it was only 8 meters, and the survivors, it was incrementally amounts, like 8 to, or not 8, it was like 1, 2, 3 survivors. So basically, if I'm reading this correctly, Kindred will work for survivors' auras at all ranks, and the amount the killer is nearby in the meter range is increased. So this is an even better anti-camp tool, which is awesome, and it's even better for solo players, which is awesome. I'm always down for a Kindred buff. Pharmacy, all tiers have been reduced, or have a reduced audible distance of 8 meters. Cool. Don't know much about that, but cool. I don't use Pharmacy. And Wake Up, all tiers reveal auras at 128 meters. I'm assuming this is just another flavor text as well. So that's fine with me. Cool. Wake Up. And that's basically the patch right here. Everything else is bug fixes and everything like that. For me, I am really, really hoping that the new Decisive Strike takes and is a solid change. I do wish there were some adjustments to other Survivor perks. I think they could use a couple of buffs in certain areas. I wish they would have changed We're Gonna Live Forever to make that a little bit more of an easier blood point gain perk, but well, here we are. I wish Hex Devour Hope was what I thought it was, but I'm starting to feel like that it's not what I thought it was, and now it makes me sad. And there are a couple other things that would have changed. Also, a reminder, Shadowborn, the perk that gives you a bunch of FOV, is FOV 15, I believe, where Monitor and Abuse at max rank is 10. So just a little bit of a heads up there in case you were curious. Finally, I want to talk about the new map as well as the new killer. New map is a lot of fun. There are some pretty solid loops you can be ran through in the center of the map, but I think most of them are just, you're going to have to finally kick this pallet and you're kind of done with it. Other than that, it has most of the Red Forest stuff, which is actually pretty good. I think it's a pretty solid map and it's not terrible. Might be a little bit tough for Mouse 1 killers like Freddy, but it should be still a pretty decent map to play on. The Plague, I think she's good. I actually think she's good. Some people think she's bad. I honestly don't think so. I think that she is a decent mid-tier level killer. She's not as good as, say, maybe the Huntress or the Hag or the Spirit, and she is not bad like the Legion or Freddy. She is like, I'd say, Doctor or Myers tier. She's not bad to play as well. She's kind of fun. She's not entirely as fun as I really would like. You know, when I play the Doctor and the Spirit, I'm just like, oh, this is for me, right? I don't really have that. Now, it could be because I'm just not as interested in her playstyle, and I like the Doctor and the Spirit a lot more. And it might be your character, but it's just not quite mine. I do love her look, though. Oh, she is disgusting. Her getup is beautiful. It's super cool looking. She speaks occasionally. Super awesome. Love all that stuff. Aesthetically, awesome. Very cool killer. Gameplay-wise, in terms of the tier list, not bad. I'd say mid-tier, give or take. And yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool. Need to learn how to play her a little bit more as time goes on. And I think she could be decent. They might need a slight change to some of her stuff, but overall, pretty good killer, pretty good map. Amazing perks. Her new perks, godly. So stoked about that. The new Survivor perks, they're okay. They're pretty okay. It's time for locker memes, though, and I'm very excited about that. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for watching this little bit of a patch notes. Overall, this is a good step in the right direction. I'm very pleased. These are a couple other things that need a bit of a buff, but overall, that is where we're at. So thank you for watching. It's a pleasure, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.